This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. All right. Welcome to the data center facility metrics call. Sorry. We talked about nothing before this started. Okay. So let me take some notes on that. As we wrote our metrics paper, Sean, which you had said that we debated about, categorizing it by life cycle and things like that. But I like the idea. So here, I'll share my screen. Share screen. A window, I think I can do.
Oh, wait, sorry for being late. I was stuck in the Google Meet link. It happens, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's in the invite. There's a Google Meet link.
I've got to simultaneously know Zoom, Teams, Chime, Workplace.
But maybe if you're always using this link, you might take out the other one, right?
Yeah.
From the invite. Yeah.
Not that one. Why is this not? Why can't I share? Like if I share this, if I switch to, no, that's not it. I want to share that, which you can't see. Hold on. You're just looking at yourselves, right? All right, I'm usually not this obtuse with screen sharing. Share screen. Window. There it is. All right. Why was that not there before? Great. Okay. Let me. Ah, shit. Sorry.
Earmuffs.
Are we being recorded? That's not good. All right. So I want to capture.
Yeah, I tried to add what Sean said in the chat, basically, and I also added what I said before. So,
thank you.
So as I said, or as you said, Rob, it depends on where we want to sit with this particular subgroup, but this is the different perspectives of the context, I think.
So if we were to break out, I mean, in our company, we kind of have the acronym DBOM: design, build, operate, maintain. But I think I want to get. I'm just write this down and let's talk about what we think. What would be the appropriate? This is in my mind. Potentially three distinct phases that might have maybe distinct metrics, maybe some overlapping, right? I think, like you said, you guys can see my screen, hopefully, right? What I'm writing?
Yeah.
Okay. Like you said, planning a design. Hey, if I'm going to Phoenix, what choices do I make, right? And things like that. Impact the land, things like that. Then I'm trying to think during the build. It overlaps with design. I mean, there's material choices. I don't know what.
Yeah, material choices. Amount of materials, rare earth. Else. Are we brainstorming?
Yeah, brainstorming, material choices. I don't know. I'm not convinced this is a choices, sourcing.
If you think about it, I guess is the planning and design technically expending any resources? Like building, you clearly are. I mean, you are like moving stuff. You're building stuff. You're burning fuel to run forklifts. What is the planning and design actually expending?
I think they're making decisions which will affect the sustainability of the facility.
Okay, and I'm just kind of poking, not disagreeing.
Yeah, no, it's good. So you said you know, what do I want my cooling plant to look at like? You know, how sustainable do I make that? Do I decide to go with gas insulated switchgear SF6, or do I go with air insulated switchgear, which maybe takes up more space? Do I use a cooling system with a different refrigerant, a more lower GWP? So that's the thing that I'm thinking of
Okay.
during planning and design. But like during the actual build phase, I'm like, what are there any like metrics you would track to improve your performance while you're building? And that I'm not sure.
Yeah, like for example, cut trees or
Yeah.
remove trees, or in the building, for example. This is something I usually talk about when talking about why I'm building in Norway.
But I guess,
Yeah.
is that planning or is that build? I'm kind of trying to struggle to see the difference between.
Yeah, you have
Exactly.
a good point.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we would just go right here, right?
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
I think that simplifies it, because
Yeah.
all of your
yeah.
planning are going to directly affect your build.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to separate them, then it will have to be metrics specific related to the planning and design, which would make decisions taken in a number of decisions, or I don't know, whatever. Paper used, number kilograms of paper used for drawings, which is not the case anymore.
How
Yeah,
many
some
CFD
traveling, of
cycles
course,
you do?
but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Yeah.
break it up like this, Rob, I almost see like your first bullet is everything that's inherently baked into the facility that you
Mhm.
really can't easily change. And I know that's a very subjective, kind of line, but like what I was used to tell people when I was at Meta is that, like, once we put that water pipe in the ground, you're not changing that for the next 30 years. We're not going to rip up a water pipe, the main water line. Once you put in that fiber trunk, probably it's there. You know, a server, you're going to rip out after like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
But it could be experimental stuff, like how can we use the data center in this sort of context, and so therefore there could be some, say, pre-installed configurations before you actually build the data center. So that is the only thing I can think of in terms of planning and design. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
especially if you're into heat reuse and so on.
that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, just imagine all the decisions that a plant, in master planning and then detailed design you have to make that will impact sustainability,
Right.
And so I think those are all the things, and that's where, you have a list of things that you can imagine a customer going to a design engineer saying, hey, here's a list of sustainability metrics I care about, and I want you to design the data center to meet these targets, theoretically, or, things like that.
But
So, okay.
Sorry, I do just have to kind of question. So you have target design for PUE. I mean, is that a design or is that really an operation? Because I mean, I think as we all know, it's so highly variable based on operation and, generally frequently replaced equipment. Like, is that something that's design or is that something that really should be more of an operate and
It,
maintain?
oh, it will be both. It will be both, right?
Okay.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, PUE is highly affected by, the designer data center, and potentially equally as well as you maintain it. Yeah. So there'll be overlap, right? So it's not, these are not a completely separate lists. I believe. I'd say, PUE. When would you care about PUE in the phase of your data center? I care about it
Right.
during the design phase and the operate phase. Whereas land, well, let's see, that would be, let me look at here. Let me scroll down to, let me go to this, at least my initial list of metrics. Things like, What would be only in design but not in operate? Let's see. Oh, total land use. So, for example, should I do a 2-story data center or a 1-story data center? How
Yeah.
much land am I impacting? How big's the parking lot? That would be a design phase metric.
Yeah.
Design build. Design build, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, design build. Yes. So as an example, whereas many of the others I think will be probably considered. Scope 1 is design. Scope 2 market-based is probably not, doesn't matter in design phase, right? Because that you can change that while you're operating, right? So anyways, those are some examples.
But
I think you could compare with capex and opex basically.
Yeah.
yes and no, because during the build you will need some machinery that will need some fuel, and
True.
they can be e-powered and be then and then you can have that instead of the scope 1 for that machinery, then it's scope 2.
Yeah.
So,
yes, but no, of course. But I meant with in terms of where the metrics belong, if it's like in a build phase or if it's operations, and it's a bit like a capex and opex. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
In terms of PUE, to answer Sean, something one could look at would be to create a matrix where you have the different stakeholders and where different metrics would be useful. So, for example, for a person in operations, PUE is, well, in actually of use, and it's only in operations. And for a government official, it would be in the decision phase, especially in the EU.
You mentioned okay, sorry, just trying to take those notes. This is so I switched tabs. This is the I just started putting words on paper, which I haven't done much since the last meeting. So in any event, overview. This is a bit of a repeat, right? I found this type of state, it's kind of standards wonk speak, right? Shall, should, may, or whatever. But I thought it could be pretty good, and it could be applicable to what we would expect from a reporting perspective from the OCP Ready program potentially, right? Just to give guidance on, hey, you really got to tell us how much energy you're using, right? This one's an important one. So okay, and again, totally debatable on what we think each category should be. I just put a first stab on that, and yeah, so I think what we could do is make another table or expand this one. I don't know. It's all about how it fits on a piece of paper and the readability of the what phase of the data center design build, planning, design, build. Yeah. So maybe the metrics. Yeah. Anyways, I'll figure out maybe a flow for that and how we break it out. A comment that Priya had, which is valid, is like, hey, we should probably start explaining these, like, hey, PUE is governed by the ISO IEC standard, blah blah blah, and a few comments about that, and we can do that across these.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be great if they could be tied back to a standard, so someone could go out and theoretically just start calculating this on their own.
Yeah.
I think with a lot of these more complex metrics, it's like the concept is very well agreed upon, but the specifics are not necessarily for some of them.
Yeah, like go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. So they did say we do not want to invent new metrics here. We want to just take stuff that's existing. So yeah, there's all of these, all the ISO ones obviously have, how do you measure on an annual basis, blah blah blah. They have reasonably good explanations on how to measure it. The other ones we'd have to see. I can't, there are, I think, best practices around how you do carbon, but we'll have to see if there's something we can point to on doing that.
Mhm.
Water use. So it's interesting. I mean, I guess if you're getting water from a utility, I mean, they can just send you hey, last month you used this much, or is some of it like, no, I'm taking it from a well on site, or I'm pulling it from a river on site, and so it's not as metered.
Yeah,
I
but
guess what's your experience there?
you'd be really shocked. Like I've run into situations where things have gone unmetered for years and utilities have not realized, and then they realize that you consume 50 million to 100 million gallons of water without being charged. And some municipalities make basically a once through assumption for wastewater because most places don't evaporate a large percentage of their water. So they basically assume 100 going in, 100 going out, which in an evaporative data
Yeah,
center is a horrible assumption.
yeah,
I've also, for some of these more stingy water technologies, I've run into facilities that use 30% of their water to water the lawn, 15% of their water to flush toilets and, run the kitchens. Um, so it's all the devil's in the detail in how accurate you want to be in this stuff. And that's, I think
yeah,
it's not really for us to say, in some ways it would give people the opportunity to look better the more accurately they gauge their data. If they want
yeah,
to just assume the pipe at the street, yeah, that may consume, your lawn watering, your kitchens, your toilets, your showers. So your water consumption may look 30% more than it really is. That to me is a end user's choice to be on granular.
yeah,
I don't know if it's our place.
yeah. Okay, yeah, good. That's interesting. Um, so Peter, there was something that you had said that I've been thinking about, in how to, and I have a thought on how to incorporate it. So one of the concerns is currently like the hyperscalers, and then have a large they have the ability to buy up a ton of renewable energy, right? They tend to go in and could potentially really impact, through the market-based thing, purchase up the renewable energy. Now, their purchasing power is great because it hopefully in the end it spurs on more builds of renewable energy. But for the local grid, something that's being talked about more and more is how our data centers, as large energy users and typically with large sources of stored energy on site, participating in grid services, right? Whether it's frequency response, peak shaving, things like that. And uh, those type of services can help the local grid put more renewables on, and become greener. So, the data center being part of a microgrid, so prosumer type of stuff. So I was wondering, does it make sense to add I mean, to be simple, it'd kind of be yes, no at this point, because I don't know to scale it, but, does the data center participate in grid services? Yes, no, would be, I
Yeah,
think, interesting for people to know. Open for discussion here.
yeah. Sorry, I'm losing power here. Speaking of which, okay. Well, it is a great question, and it's more into the sort of research I'm doing. And it's also, I think, at least I'm not really sure about North America, but in the EU, these sorts of questions are very tough because we do have an energy shortage, especially after the Ukrainian war. But so for example, right now in Dublin, as I said, they have a huge problem with this, with the grid, and Microsoft just got approved, a 170 megawatt farm for natural gas, and as it seems, it's only to be supplying with backup power. I'm not really sure in how they calculate that because they can't really fit into the grid as it is. So the jury's still out on that one. But in Odense in Denmark, Meta was building this big wind farm to supply its own data center, which is all good. And I would assume that the surplus is actually going to the grid, which sort of answers your question. However, at least in the waters outside Denmark, Sweden, the Netherlands, and other European coastal countries, we only have that much space for wind farms. So, in other words, when Meta is taking or building one of these wind farms, there is less power to the rest of Denmark, and Denmark imports a lot of energy especially from Sweden, since they don't have any nuclear energy, for example.
Mm.
So it is sort of a problem for societies, and it's also part of the discussion. How can they act as part of a microgrid, as you put it, and can they be used can a big data center be used as sort of a negative battery? So you only run a lot of compute when it's not needed for, say, household kitchens or something.
Yeah. That was during the discussion yesterday, and one of the topics did come up. It's like how, when you look at loads that are batch jobs, right? AI, machine learning, things like that, right? Between on the software side, scheduling software to be maybe easier on the grid, to maybe energy storage. I mean, some people, there's systems that, I think we have some installed in Sweden where the grid is looking for some FFR, fast frequency response services, and it's actually lucrative. So the data center can basically respond and help stabilize any frequency variations if the grid asks them to, and they end up making money. But all those type of things, peak shaving, changing your load when needed, all help in the renewable aspect of things.
Yeah, and it's very big, especially in Sweden, I think. Where I am, by the way, but my research is done in the UK. But yeah.
So just one question then, because we are talking about two different things. One is let's say the worst impact, or the bad impact, which is the depletion of renewable energies from societies, right? So for that we can have a metric, let's say, and then there's the other topic, which is what are they giving back to society, theoretically giving back, because at the end it's a lucrative thing. I mean, we don't have to forget that. Otherwise, this wouldn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to link really both. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how to do a metric around. Hey, you're sucking up all the renewable energy in the region, or because some people say look, I'm spending money on renewable energy. If I didn't, then I'd just be a huge burden on your grid with no renewable energy. So what do you want? Yeah, I don't know how to do a metric around that.
Well, there are two different ways, as far as I know, to buy that energy, and most of the PPAs are usually built around the opportunity that there is a precise demand on a certain amount of energy. So those renewable energy plants are never going to be built unless there is a demand on the other side. It's how it usually works, right? The investors for that power plant, they won't invest a dime until they see there is a potential buyer, or a buyer, a signed buyer. And then that's the one way. And then the other way is there is a pool already of power plants belonging to a utility. They exist already, and then they take part of that power and allocate into a PPA, or they structure that into that PPA. So there are, in my opinion, two ways where we can differentiate maybe.
So that's a good point. We have a team at Schneider that's very, they know all this stuff about PPAs. I know cursory about how they work and how they're structured. And if there is a defined way to describe, like you said, PPA that spurs on new build of renewables versus sucking up existing, I think that could be a very interesting. I like it. So let me
Because
let
if
me
we're going
write
to get
that
into
down.
that with PPAs, I mean, I feel like you also have to start talking about, what is it? There's like the regular PPAs versus a PPA 24/7, which, the former potentially
Yeah,
makes everything even worse, and you end up using more fossil fuels. And like,
It
I mean,
depends.
if we're going to go into one, I feel like you have to talk about the other aspect that, from what I've read, PPAs are actually making a lot of things worse in a lot of situations.
mm,
It depends on the percentages. For example,
Yeah.
you can, I mean,
Yeah.
a PPA that is a new build will never cover 100% of the energy because you will always need to take out from somewhere else or from the spot or whatever
Yeah.
spot market
Which is always fossil fuels. So now you're basically,
or not.
your green PPA is a lot of times actually encouraging the increase in fossil fuel use. And, I don't know
Yeah.
if we're going down a rabbit hole, but I feel like
yeah.
that's a lot of concerns that I've read. That a lot of these PPAs are just a shell game and they're not really helping in the way that I think a lot of people are presenting them to be.
And for sure, this is the factor that Peter highlighted before. There are limited capacities and land and potential of building that as well. So this is something, especially in some countries, right, where there are not so many construction companies, professionals, or land available for wind power. For instance, wind power, it's allocated from the government probably so much land for wind power, and that's it, right? It's like it's that, right? What you were mentioning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, basically, for a politician, it's like, okay, so we're going to use this wind power for our community, like
Yeah.
whatever, schools and hospitals or whatever, or for this data center, and I mean, it's what it is. Or are we going to import from other sources? It's I mean, it is the choice they have when there is only a limited supply of energy. It's
I do have some concern. I mean, I feel like in some ways we're saying that data centers are a negative to the world in saying that. And that's kind of I mean, it's a concern. This is the industry we're in. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think you could have a very lively debate over, data centers, and you go into what is the data center doing? Is this cat pictures, or is this data center, hosting critical information for government? Is it hosting, medical records? So I feel like we're very quickly going to devolve into that. And personally, I'm not really comfortable saying, basically taking the attitude that data centers are a negative as a whole, and that using power for them is bad.
Are
I
you
don't know if that's.
no, of
gonna?
course not. They're good for the world in principle. Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we need to be able to measure that. As Sean said, for example, how much energy, for example, a data center spares or avoids from traditional physical activities. I don't know, we can maybe compare
Yeah.
how much compute power is used for emails and in comparison to how much energy was used for sending traditional mail post. I know,
Yeah,
it's just
or commuting. I mean, it's you could. I mean, you could see how much cleaner the air got in Paris, for example, when during COVID, because everyone worked from home. So it wouldn't have been possible without data centers. So yeah, they are very good for the world, I would say.
Yeah. All right, we went down a really good rabbit hole there on the existential benefits of data centers here. So that was that's good. This is a very good discussion. I like the idea because I we don't want these metrics to encourage greenwashing of some form, right? We'd like them to be you know straightforward enough, and maybe as we look at um, again, thinking about the list that we have, right? So there's from a scope two perspective, GHG, right? There's here is location based. So this would be, hey, you're your data center is connected to this grid in this location. This grid has this particular carbon, carbon intensity, right? Done. That's what it is, what it is. But hey, you also have some PPAs, blah, blah, blah. You have some market-based stuff. And so this is what this is. Maybe there is something under here where we could say, you must specify if it exists. And this is where the research I'll try to do, and you guys too, on the type of PPA that you have, and make sure that this spurs new renewable builds versus sucking up existing. So I like, this is a great conversation. Very good. Okay, good. So so we have 15 minutes left. So I just want to kind of recap some of the stuff that we talked about. I really like the idea of taking a look at the metrics based on phasing, because I think it matters, right? And I didn't, one thing, since you, let me go back here. I'm going to ask, all right, I'm going to ask for help now. Here we go. So, Peter, would you be able to just, detail out, and I'm looking not for the stakeholder and user section, like, what do we want to say? You had really good thoughts on, the different internal, external, and if you could just write your thoughts down, I'll pop it in here, and then we can go through refining, because I think that's important.
Sure, thanks. And just to be clear, I mean, I'm pretty happy with just saying that there are external stakeholders, but I have a feeling, Rob, that you want to sort of run this white paper from the operations side. And if I understand correctly, and I'm fine with that. I just think that we should, also say that, well, there are also other perspectives, and they must be taken into account, or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and again, I'm not looking at 2 pages. I think a simple paragraph or whatever would be great here. I think it's important. Okay, great. And then anything else? I think the place this is stored in Google Docs is like not super open. But what I will try to do is, at least send this out. I do still want. Let me go back. I'm like looking at the screen and then separating. Again, from a laziness perspective, but again, a lot of work previous is, I did take, the previous paper that we had done and just ported over the metrics, because I think they're good. But this is a community thing, so comments on this, and I could, if there's any concerns with these, I can kind of tell you at least the thought process on why we included it. Maybe there's stuff missing, or, again, it is a long list, and I think that's where the, shall, should, and may thing might come in to help shrink it up for these are the essentials versus, the nice to have stuff.
But no new metrics, right? You said.
Yeah. The prior to me coming in, they said that we're not going to invent new metrics, basically. The only, well, and there is an invention here, and that we did, and let me, and that is, I mean, it's pretty standard, but land use intensity is actually invented, but it would be a kW or megawatt per square meter of the land that you have. So, that's sort of invented.
All topics we have discussed about PPAs, or I don't know, different types. I mean, availability of land or whatever, availability of power, etc., are not going to be reflected in new metrics.
No. When I say no, I mean not invent.
We're not inventing a new PUE, but we could add a different metric, as long as it's like an agreed upon metric. So number 7 can grow. We're just not pulling new inventions out of the air. is what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying.
Exactly. Yeah, you could, if there's something out there that we have missed, well, let's add it to this list as long as it's a real
Yeah,
thing,
like
Uh,
I would
yeah,
like to, and maybe we'll bring, I don't know if you work with Aaron
Okay.
at all on the other group, like I'd like to consider something that maybe captures, water scarcity in the region. There's a couple ways we could do that. I think he's done a lot of research and work on it, so I think he'd be a great person to bounce things off of. But that's the one water thing I don't really see. We're not really factoring in, is this a highly water stressed region that you're building a data center in, or is there an abundant supply like the northeast of the United States? Not water scarce. You could pull a lot of water and no one's going to care. It's probably not a
yeah,
big deal either. Completely different from New Mexico. That, in my opinion, should be factored somewhere into it. You should not penalize people for using water as a concept. You should penalize people for using water in places that there's not a lot of water and it's going to harm the community.
Well, I
Kind of.
kind of disagree on
Yep.
that. You know why? Because we don't have as a just want to throw an idea, right? Is the fact that we don't have a system that goes and transports potable water from land to land, from state to state, I would say is it's impeding us to see that water is a precious good. And if there is a lot somewhere, we say, okay, I don't bother because I have no way of transporting it somewhere else. Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, you could fill in reservoirs and then fill in on trucks, e-power trucks, and move them to another state, to New Mexico, when there is a scarcity of water, right? So, yeah, I kind of disagree. I see, of course, what you see. Of course, it's obvious, but I kind of disagree that is we don't really care because in Washington State there's a lot of water, you know.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
they're all context based. I mean, they must be, especially water. Energy is, well, energy I guess is scarce everywhere almost, but water especially.
well, but it's not. I mean, I got to disagree. Saying that water is scarce everywhere in the world, I'm going to disagree with that as a
Yeah,
concept.
but that's what I'm saying. Water is not. It's the opposite.
I
It's
mean,
scarce
it's
in some
scarce
places.
some places. I mean, it's the same way of saying, like, if you're in Montreal, Canada, where they've got an abundant supply of, hydropower, should you treat that in the same way as a place that's burning coal? Like, I don't think you should treat those two locations identically in every respect.
Of course.
So, I mean, evaporative systems use less power in almost every situation. If you're in a place that has in no way is water stress, I don't think, in my opinion, it would be unfair to penalize people from, yes, there's ways to game the system. And Jamie, I agree with you. But in general, if you're in a place that has a lot of water, why would you not support reducing your power consumption if it means using some water?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and
And
how we capture that, I'm not trying to define that on this call. I think it should be something that should be discussed and the community as a
yeah,
whole to agree if we can capture that in an acceptable manner.
I think I'm not sure it's really going to be part of the white paper because it might stretch it too far, as I think you were discussing. But I think the only way to capture it, it must be the only way, is to have more of a holistic metric, like a scorecard solution, and maybe an accreditation body like Uptime that looks into this. I think that's the only way forward for that.
yeah. Well, but yeah, to your point, there's outside of our team, there's a lot of people looking at it. So that's a good thing about this community. I agree. I mean, so let's imagine uh I always have to put things in context of like a scenario so I can freaking understand it because my mind is very simple. But so I'm designing a data center, right? And maybe you have a choice of exactly where to put it. Maybe you said, well, I have to put a data center here, right? And I'm designing the cooling system, and maybe there is a guideline that says, hey, historically this region is this level of water stressed. Almost never, periodically, right? So that me as a designer, that guidance would help me design the potentially correct cooling system for that particular location that maximizes the efficiency and doesn't really have a negative impact on the water in that region, right? That's how so you do so that would help with the design,
Yeah.
and then it is say I'm in. say I'm somebody choosing a co-location company, right? And I have these options, and you could say this guy uses this much water per kilowatt, but this guy uses this much water per kilowatt. But you know what? This guy is in Phoenix because he built his data center 10 years ago when we weren't thinking about it. Maybe I'll choose this other guy because it's impacting the. So I could see those two things working together in some general form, but I think it's only useful if we have like a scale or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, and I mean it's of course. I mean, as you all know, that these things get very complex because now you get into water, offsite water consumption, and now it gets even more complicated. But I think that is a
Yeah.
metric that you did have captured, source water consumption,
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah, and
which
it's
is
it's kind of part of WUE. I forget which one it is.
source
I have
WUE versus WUE.
yeah, yeah. Wait until we get into obviously there's embodied carbon, which is part of scope 3, and then there's going to be water
Water.
use in the supply chain for the products that you pick. So
Yeah.
wait for that to happen too.
Like
And
embodied water, huh? Like
embodied water.
Um, and I think Peter, I mean, I don't know if we need to go into this, but maybe that is something just to at least talk about concept that like this really does have to be a multi-criteria decision-making analysis. I don't think OCP is the one to do that because it's really to me going to depend on the stakeholders and the location and what's important. But ideally, that is how this should be done. You've got your 20 metrics. Every organization needs to kind of understand what's important to them and put ranks and criteria because a lot of these are going to compete with each other, frankly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good point. I'm writing it down.
Okay, yeah, and I think maybe just even like 250 words, just maybe discussing that. Hey, here's the metrics everyone needs to understand, and do a stakeholder analysis to determine how you're going to weight these and put them into some structured analysis. Like we're giving you the metrics, we're setting the standards. We're not going to define what's good and
Right.
what's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So good.
Rob, are you going to
Uh,
share these, Rob, so we can have a look?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll PDF the document as it stands in the meeting minutes, and I'll send that out to the. I think I can send that out via the group, and so you can take a look and comment. So
Okay.
yeah,
Super fair.
yeah. So good. This was a very good discussion. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys getting on. It's good. I learned a lot.
And because my only last question is, what is your timeline? Because we talked about that in the other subgroup. I think there was an initial desire to get something out prior to the conference. I don't think
Yeah.
that's realistic. I think we could do an update for the other subgroup if someone wants, but I don't think we're releasing a white paper.
No, our goal is to have maybe a draft, right? An unfinished draft. It's not approved and released by any means, but we have something that we think is on the right track, and we'll put that in a PowerPoint and say, hey, here's where we are. This is what we're thinking, and see what the community thinks. That sound good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
from doing this last year, I mean, we
Yeah, but
basically have to have the draft done now if we wanted to probably, present a final release product in October.
Submit it.
oh yeah, it won't be released. Yep, exactly. You got it.
Okay,
I mean, we have the session approved. We're going to talk about something, so we can work on this all the way, up until the month before. These are pretty innocuous presentations. It's not like again, watching out for vendors to do something weird. So I think we can work on this all the way up through September, October, and then do the presentation and share it. So.
And yeah, I mean, as I recall, I think we had 10 minutes or 11 minutes last year to present the final product. It
I
was like
think
it was a hilariously
hopefully it's
short amount of
yeah.
time.
I know, because usually there's good, you want 10 minutes for comments, right? Because it takes a while for the audience to like get comfortable commenting on it, and so you need to have the time. So I'm hoping it's longer, maybe 20 minutes. I hope, but we'll see. All right. Cool. All right. Top of the hour. Thanks again. Really appreciate it. And I'll send this stuff out.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right.
Great
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.